Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. And today what we're going to be taking a look at is another A320 guide for beginners. Quite a bit has changed with the A32NX mod that I use, and there will be a link for it in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out if you're interested in all the features. If you're interested in flying the A320, I highly suggest that you download the mod and install it. It brings a lot of life to the aircraft and much needed performance corrections to it. So anyway, I think you guys will really enjoy it. So today is for someone who has never flown the A320 before, or is maybe new to airliners and FS 2020 in general, and is just interested in getting in one and starting up. I'm not going to go through every single step in detail. We're going to just go into what you would need as a beginner to get up, to get flying. This is going to be a full flight from Tucson International over to Phoenix, Arizona, Sky Harbor. And we'll be using SimBrief to create the flight plan, and then going through it from there. All right. And any tools and add-ons that I do use today will be down in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do now that we're in the seat here is we're going to go upstairs, and we're just doing a quick walkthrough of a few things. So first thing we obviously want is batteries 1 and 2 turned on. If external power is available, we can go ahead and tag that real quick. We're going to bring up our ADR system, start the nav system. There's 1 and 2 and 3. Get those aligned. Now they are set to instantly align, and I'll show you guys how to do that in just a minute. Make sure our plaque flow is set to norm. Start the air conditioning as you choose. Set it to where you'd like. Get the crew oxygen supply going. And then we can turn on our beacon light and the nav and logo light. Emergency exit lights, we also want to set those up to the arm position. Alright, so now let's go ahead and continue with the next phase. Alright, so now we'll look at the forward flight deck preparation while everything is turning on here, so we can bring up the lights on our primary flight display, on our nav display here. Okay. Bring up the standby ADI screen, make it a little bit brighter. Again, nav display, primary flight display. We can set our constraints on now, flight directors on, constraints and flight directors. And you don't have to do these right now, it's just as long as you put them in somewhere in your sequence. Brighten up our ECAM pages on the lower display. Alright, and we will not be using air traffic control today because I can't stand the in-game ATC, so this is going to be completely self-simulated here. So we're going to simulate that we've gotten our clearance and that we have a squawk code of 3526, and I will leave the transponder in standby for now, but we can go ahead and set it. Make sure flaps are down, spoilers are down and locked, parking brake is set. Check the accumulator pressure here, make sure you're in the green. You can see that little arrow right there. Alright. Let's move on up here. Going back upstairs for a second. Let's see here. I feel like I was missing something up here. Maybe not. Maybe I got it. Yep, I did. Okay, never mind. Disregard. We don't need to be upstairs anymore. So now let's move on to the next section of this, in which we will start the flight plan creation. Okay, so jumping into SimBrief here, the first thing that you're going to want to do to be effective in today's tutorial is you're going to want to log into SimBrief. Make sure you guys are logged in. And then you want to click on the link I have in the description below for the A32NX profile for SimBrief. Okay, as soon as you're logged in, click on the link in the description below. It says A32NX SimBrief profile. It's an extremely long link. Just select that, tell it you want to add it to your fleet. Okay, and again, that is a very specific profile to the A32NX that we're using today. So it'll help get SimBrief the most accurate information to you. Alright, so now let's go ahead and create new flight. We're going to use American Airlines today. We're going to just pick a flight number. We're going to go from Tucson International over to Phoenix. Airframe, we're going to use this guy right here, N320 or Sierra Bravo, and the A320-200. Okay, this is the one we want. Don't pick the one down here. Use this one. Alright, so we got that in. We're going to change our units, measurement units to kilograms. And then fuel factor, this determines, so if you find that SimBrief is always giving you too much gas or too little gas, you can tell it basically to add or subtract a percentage of what it's going to give you based on these numbers here. P means it's going to plus and add it. M means it's going to reduce it. I tend to have way more fuel than what I need. So for today, I'm going to start out with about 30%. I'm going to tell it to reduce the amount of fuel it gives me by 30%. Cost index, I'm going to go ahead and set that pretty high. Again, this is the how much fuel you burn to how expensive it is. higher the number, more fuel you burn, the faster you go. Lower the number, obviously the opposite. Now, if you're using something like FS Economy, or you're doing something where you actually, are simulating the purchase of fuel, you want to be real careful with this, because how you would do this is, if the gas is more expensive in Tucson than it is in Phoenix, then in Tucson you're going to put just enough gas in the aircraft to get you to Phoenix. Obviously a little bit more, within safety measures. Okay, and then in Phoenix you may put a ton of fuel in it, to get around to the next couple hops, right? It all depends on the cost of the fuel at the location. All right, departure runway, it's got us at 29 right, arriving at 08 in Phoenix. That's fine. Passengers, let's go ahead. It's a pretty short flight. This is a little puddle jump, so we're only going to do like 124 passengers. Keep it light. Cargo, we'll set it at 9.4, though the cargo doesn't seem to add in correctly, but we'll see what happens. All right, and that's all we need from this page right here. Now we're just going to hit Generate OFP, or Operational Flight Plan. Now, the next thing we get is this screen here. Now, I like to do the print preview for the PDF. Okay, it brings it all up into one sheet for me. However, if you have trouble reading one of these and don't know where a lot of stuff is, you can click on this link right here and then put it side by side with your real flight plan, and then anytime you mouse over something, it tells you what it is, like literally every single line. Okay, so it makes it really handy when figuring out what everything is. All right, so now let's go ahead and move on here. I don't need that anymore. We're done with sim brief for today. Again, I'm not going to be using ATC, so I'm not too worried about much else there. All right, now we have everything set up here, so let's move on down to the pedestal and get to the MCDU. Now, a bunch of things have changed in the MCDU. First of all, GPS primary, when it's up like this, it means that the alignment is good and complete, and that's because I have it set to instant. And where I did that was, if you come here to options, give it a tap, and we are looking for, where was it? Alignment times, the 8 years. Click on that. You have instant, fast, and real. Okay, so I like instant. I just like to know it's done and over with. Acceleration altitude. This is the altitude above ground at which the aircraft will sort of pitch down, accelerate to its climb speed, and then continue to climb out. And again, typically for the US, it's about 1,500 feet above ground level. If you want to change that, you would simply type in the altitude you want it to happen and enter it into the box. Okay, but those are the only ones I'm going to worry about for today. We're going to keep everything else as default for now. I don't want to add too much to this. Okay, and then from here we want to go to FMGC, and we're in. All right, so the first screen here, obviously we have our nav data information, tells us the active and deactivate dates. Basically tells us whether or not your air rack is current. The performance numbers here, this is for a derated performance on the aircraft. As the aircrafts get older and older, they'll start adding a number here, which basically tells the engines to reduce their performance, and it just saves on wear and tear. Obviously, we don't need to worry about that today. Okay, we have a brand new plane straight off the line. So let's get into what we are interested in. Let's start with the initial A page. So you have A and you have B. Okay, we're going to focus just on A for right now. And we're going to start by entering in our destination information. Coming to our sim brief, you can see our destination information is right here at KTUS to KPHX. The only thing we're going to do is change this hyphen to a slash. So we're going to do KTUS / KPHX and throw that in there. Flight number, or this would bring you to the company page. If you had stored flight plans in here, which if you do, you know how to do it already, you could select your flight plan and it would very rapidly enter it into the system. I may demonstrate that at a later time, but I'm not going to worry about it today. All right, and then it has to be for the specific route. All right, and then so our cost index now. So we're going to find our cost index here. That's 70, and then below it is our cruise altitude. We're going to find that here. However, I'm going to change that. I'm going to set this to about 19,000, so you guys will see how that does. And just because, again, it's a very, very short flight. I don't even think it's 30 minutes of flight time. All right, so cost index is 70. Just drop that in there. And we're going to do 190 for our cruise altitude. And you can see autopopulates the temp there. All right. Now we're going to move on over to the flight plan and start entering our flight plan information. Now, on first glance, this probably looks a little daunting and like, holy crap, what is all this? But it's really not too bad. You have your starting point and you have your end point. Oh, sorry, here's our end point. All right, so what we want is we want to go to starting point. We're selecting our departure, right? And now we're determining the other information. So let's go down to our route here for a second. And you can see right here, KTUS, 29 right. That's our runway. Okay, so we're going to come down and find 29 right. So there's 29 right. We're going to grab that. And we're not using a transit or a SID today. We're not using a departures. And you can see because it goes directly from 29 right direct to Ryan. Okay, so we're not going to be using any of the SIDs. So we're just going to come up here and tap none. And just going to go into insert. All right, so now we have our information here. Now, whenever you have a direct flight plan, okay, when you see DCT, this is probably the easiest thing ever you could ever enter. So easy. And that's why I picked this to start with. Okay, so we're just going to go direct to Ryan. So all we're going to do is type Ryan. So that's, what is it, R-Y-Y-N-N, Romeo, Yankee, Yankee, November, November. And we're going to put it right here on the destination. So boom, just stick it there for a second and just watch this for a minute. The decel should move down. Yep, there it goes. And hit insert. Boom, there's that. Now let's grab the next one. So from Ryan, we're going to HOT, H-O-T-T-T. So Hotel, Oscar, Tango, Tango, Tango. And again, same thing. I put it right on the top. There we go. Wait for the decel to move down. And I'm sure you don't have to wait for it. I just like to because I like to see it. Make sure everything's going right. Boom. Insert. Okay. And that's done. All right. And I think that should be pretty much it. So next, now you can see it goes from hot directly to ping. And then from ping directly to the airport. So this tells us that this right here is our STAR, or standard terminal arrival route, right? So what we're going to do now, we're thinking arrival, so let's click on our destination. All right, and we want the arrival. And then again, we want ILS 08, and we can see that on our flight plan right here, 08. All right, now we want to find, see, we need to select the STAR, and that's going to be right before our runway, our destination, so we want the ping 1 is what we're looking for. So there's the ping 1. Drop that guy in there. No vias, nothing to worry about there. Let's scroll up just to make sure. Or scroll back. Yep, no, nothing there. Good. And then we just hit insert. Easy peasy. Alright, so now it's got a couple of different things here. Like it's got this transition of driver. So what we're going to do is we're going to check something here real quick. I'm going to come down to my flight plan route. You can see where we joined the ping. And really what I do is I just make sure that none of these are listed. So we got the driver, hot, and that's it. Alright, these are the stars. We're not worried about the star. We already have our star selected. So we're just looking for driver or hot. And I think we have hot in there. So there's direct to hot. Yep, and we're not using anything after that. We're just going straight in. So what we want to do here, you can see driver selected. We don't want driver, we want hot. Alright. And it's asking us to do this again, so that's fine. We're just doing that. Find the ping 1 again. And hit insert. And there you go. Okay. Alright, so we're done here. So now what we can do is go to our flight plan. And let's verify that everything looks good. So what we're going to do is come up here. Let me zoom in a bit here, try to get you guys a better view. Alright, so we're going to look at our nav display. And up here are the rotaries for the display. So we're going to make sure it's set to 10. We want to end pretty close. And we're going to go to plan. Okay, and you can see how this all starts. Now we're going to be taking off from 29 right, which is going this way. So that's probably why they did that there. So now we're just going to jump through, and what we're looking for is any breaks in the flight plan where these green lines don't connect, or any weird like backtracks, things like that. So that's good. Into ping. Perfect. Looking really good. And there's where we join into the pattern. And touchdown to 08. So our flight plan is golden, which means the flight plan is complete. Okay? So now let's move on to the rest of the MCDU configuration. Alright, so next we need to start entering the performance data. Alright, in order to do that, we need to figure out a few other things. First, we need to configure the weights and balances of the aircraft. So we're going to bring up our fuel page here, or our weights page here, I should say. We'll bring up our flight plan, and we're going to scroll upward. And here is what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be looking at this one here a lot, the fuel, and we're going to be interested in payload. Okay, and it actually did add the cargo. That's not bad. Cool. Alright, now what I like to do, I know there's a setting in the simulator where we can switch this from gallons and pounds to liters and kilograms. However, every time I've tried to use it, if you try to mess with the wing tanks, the sliders are just busted. It doesn't work right, and it's been like that for a few weeks now. So I just like to keep it at pounds, and then I go to Google and just simply type kilograms to pounds, and it brings us up something like this, right? And so then let's look at our fuel first. So we're going to come up to our fuel. And what we're interested in is total fuel. So our total fuel is going to be our block fuel right here. Okay, so 3347. So we're going to go 3347, and that gives us 7378 pounds. So now let's come back to our sim, and you can see our fuel here, 23450, right? So we're way high on the pounds. So we're looking for 7300. Close. Alright, so there's 7,500. So then what I'll do is come to the tanks, and this is where switching it messes it up. Oops. Let's go. I wish I could just type on the 19. So there's 7383. So that's certainly close. But I'm trying to keep them as balanced as I can, so I'm going to go switch this guy down to 19. And then what we can do is add, 40 pounds or so. So we'll make this 7303. And then change this guy 33. All right, 7343. So actually we need another 30 pounds or so. So let's change this to 46. And change this one to 46. And 7373 versus 7378. So we're good. Okay, so we got our fuel laid out. Now we need to set our cargo and payload. So we're just going to do the same thing. Come down here, find our payload. And again, we're just interested in this number. So 18,700 kilograms. So we're going to do 18,700. And we got 41,226 pounds. So now we're going to take a look at our payload. 20,000. So we're going to bring that up. And don't worry, we'll fix the center of gravity here in just a minute. Come on. There we go. All right, so we're at 42. Nope, too much. We need 41,226. Gosh darn it. Really wish there was an easier way to do that. Wow, that's like almost right on the money. So 41,226, we need about 20 pounds taken off of it. So this is, 20 pounds is nothing. So you guys can sort of pick and choose where you want that to go. We can change this, for example, to 190. And now we're at 41,230 versus 226. So we could even take 12 pounds off if you really want to get crazy. 08. Boom. There's our 41,226 pounds. Now we need to fix our center of gravity. It's way forward. So what we're going to do is look at our luggage here. And we're going to take 5,000 pounds off here. Put it there in the back. Or take it off, sorry. And we're going to move it to the back. There. Now we got a good center of gravity. Okay. And just use your luggage, your baggage compartments ideally. All right. And so we have a MAC, or center of gravity, of 29.66. All right. And that's our weights and balances. That part's done. Alright, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and finish the MCDU configuration. So we're going to go to the initialization page again, switch over to page B, and we have zero fuel weight, center of gravity. This is that MAC number, 29.6, right? And then zero fuel weight is the total weight of the aircraft without any gas in it. Alright, so we're just going to give that a tap. It'll actually auto-calculate, and you can see it did that there, rounded it up. Alright, just give it another throw in there. Block fuel, you can grab that by coming right here. Here it is. Okay, so 3.3. Keep it on the low end there. So 3.3. And throw that guy in there. Alright, now, all of this will auto-calculate, so let's just give this a quick tap, and then just wait a second. It does take a second, so just be patient. Boom, there we go. All right, so here we have, this is the estimated, and again, this is in kilograms, right? Or actually, excuse me, I think this is in tons. But this is the estimated fuel that's going to be burned upon taxi, how much fuel we're going to burn during the actual trip and the total time of the trip. Then we have our route reserves, 0.2 at 5%. Now, alternate, we're going to enter this in. I'm going to show you what this is. This is the estimated amount of fuel it takes to get to the needed to get to the alternate location. So we're going to go back up to our fuel section, and we're looking for this one right here. So here's alternate, and we're looking for this number, so 840, right? So what we're going to do is actually type 0.8. Okay. Boom, there's that. So we got 19 minutes of flight time to there. And then the final end time is our final reserves. So you can see that right here is 0.7. We can call it 0.8. So we're actually probably a little low on the reserves, truth be told. But 0.8, we have 28 minutes of flight time. Okay, if we need to orbit or something like that, something goes wrong, whatever, you know, we're put on hold. We have 28 minutes past our flight time that we can loiter around in the air. All right. So that's pretty much it for this page. I'm not going to go over everything in detail. We're going to keep moving on. You have your takeoff weight and estimated landing weight here. So that could be coming in handy here in just a minute, especially the takeoff weight. So actually, let's do something real quick. So here's the A320 performance calculator, and I'm not quite sure why it showed up like that. That was weird. And it's not 100% scaled aircraft to aircraft, but it gets close enough. And what we're going to be looking for is what's called the flex temp. Okay, it is a D-rated performance based on the outside temperature. Okay, and its purpose is to save wear and tear on the engines and save fuel. Okay, rather than just going what's called TOGO, which is basically maximum power until you take off. Now you can do that if you want. You can skip this step and just push the throttles all the way forward when you go take off. It's totally up to you, but I like to save as much as we can here, just to keep it fun. So we're going to select the A320. We're going to be using the CFM engines. They're close enough to what's in this thing, if I remember correctly. Metric or imperial. I like to keep it at metric because we're in the A320. Set your departure code. All right, and you can get the meter information if you want. And if you want it, the barometric pressure, for example, there it is, 2983. All right, and we'll go ahead. You know what? We'll go ahead and use that because I don't want to use ATC. I mean, the weather's always wrong. Like, I can almost guarantee here for giggles. Let's go ahead and see what ATIS has. Yeah, 259 at 7 always, and altimeter of 2 every single time. Yeah, this is why I don't use ATC. It's boring. It never has any changes. So let's see here. Oh, wait. There we go. So we're going to go 2983. You guys saw how I did that. So this one here reduces and increases the backlights. This one over here brings up the screens. So we're going to go down to 2983 for altimeter. Okay, so we got our altimeter pressure. And then we're going to come back over here. I'm going to set it back to metric because I want the measurement to be what we want. All right, and we're going to come over here, and this is going to be our takeoff weight. So that's where we had that, what was it, 62.8? Yep, 62.8. And you can literally type that. So you can go 62.8. And then it wants that center of gravity. So we want 29.7. And then just click on the box below. And this is the estimated stabilizer trim for takeoff. So down 0.3 degrees, but we'll let the aircraft take care of that. We're going to select our runway. We're using 2908, and we're going to hit calculate. Now it gives you V speeds and things like that, but I don't use these. I use the aircraft's calculations, especially now that they've gotten so much better. But this we want, the flex temp. So we have a flex temp of 64. Just remember that. All right, so now that's done, let's go ahead and move to the performance page. All right, and here's where this gets fun. So this slant to shift, what this is if, let's say you, instead of joining the runway at Alpha, you join the runway at Delta. What you would do is enter in the distance between Alpha and Delta into this box, and it tells the MCDU and the flight computer, hey, I have this much less runway than you think I have, because the computer knows how long a runway is supposed to be. Okay, and so by typing that number in there, you're telling the computer, we don't have the whole runway, here's how much we've got. Okay, and that will affect your V speeds is why. For example, if you're running on a shorter runway, your V1 is going to be slower, all right? Because V1, let's break these down for a second too, in case anyone doesn't know. V1, this is the speed at which the aircraft can no longer be safely stopped on the runway. Once you pass this speed, you must take off, no ands, if, or buts. VR, this is the speed at which you would begin pulling back or rotating, and V2 is the speed at which the aircraft will continue to accelerate even with a loss of an engine. Okay, so those are broken down for you. All right, so we're not going to worry about the shift. Flaps, we're going to be using flaps 1. You would only use flaps 2 or 3 if you were extremely heavy, maybe on a very wet runway, you know, and I mean both of those combined, right? But you're pretty much always going to be using flaps 1. But those are some scenarios. Like I said, if you're really, really heavy, you might use flaps 2. All right, so we're going to be using flex temp of 64. Transition altitude in the U.S. is always going to be 18,000 feet. In the Europe, it's always 6,000 feet. And anywhere else, you're going to have to look it up because I don't know. And here's that thrust reduction acceleration altitude that we looked at, where it said 1,500 feet in the in the MCDU options. So this is 1,500 feet above ground level, which is 4,094 feet barometric. Okay, so that's why it's got that there. All right, and so now all we're going to do is tap these, and you can see they change, so it's recalculating. 46 and 150. V2, we're going to be taking V2, so it's 150 plus 10 and putting it up in the box. So we're going to come up here to our speed and take that up to 160. Give me just a second here. Let me find my stuff. Oh, that's too slow. I was using my Stream Deck to control all the autopilot stuff. It works really nice. But making large jumps, it sort of takes a minute. Alright, so there we go, 160 knots. The other thing we're going to do is we can set our initial course heading. So this is going to be the heading of the runway. And so again, we can go to Navigraph for that one. Or you can just look it up, it's up to you. Let's find Tucson International, bring up the book here. And we're going to be looking at standard image departures. And actually, I don't even think we need that. I think I just need the runway information. Yep, that's all we needed. Alright, so 29 right here is 303 degrees. So we're just going to put that down. And let's roll it black. There we go. 303. Okay. Initial altitude, normally we would set at whatever the restriction is or whatever ATC tells us to. We'll go ahead and start with 10,000 feet and roll it up as we get moving just to simulate that we've been given clearance to continue our climb. But if it was just me and I wasn't recording, I'd probably set it up to 19,000 feet to our cruise altitude. Alright, but we'll simulate as much as we can here. Alright, so that is it for the MCDU configuration. It is ready to roll, so we'll return to the flight plan page. Let's go ahead and set our nav display back to the arc position, and let's go ahead and continue with the startup. Alright, so we've got our weights and balances done, we've got the MCDU configured, we got our flight plan created, we're going to simulate that our passengers are boarded and everybody is ready to roll, so now it's time to start getting this aircraft out the door. So let's go ahead and go upstairs here, and first thing we're going to want to do is flip on our fuel pumps, and then we're going to start the APU. So master switch and then the start button. Set our seatbelt signs on, no smoking signs to on as well. Turn our wing lights on. And then we'll wait for the APU to be available and we'll switch power sources. So by doing so, we'll come down here. Once the APU is started, you'll see the bottom display page automatically switch to the APU information display. And once you see flap open, means everything's getting started. Here's the exhaust temperature for the APU, and here's the RPM. We're waiting for just about 100% before we can use it. While that's going on, what we can do though is tell the jetway we're good to go and have them disconnect. So I'm just going to tap my jetway button here. I don't know why that doesn't work. Guess I'm not. Maybe I'm not going to do that. Huh. Alright, well, guess we'll have to call ATC for that. Alright, so we're going to go ground services, Tucson ground, and tell them to get rid of the jetway. There we go. Come on. There it goes. Alright. Jetway's getting out of here. APU's just about fired up. We're going to go ahead and set our auto brakes to max, and that's in the event of a rejected takeoff. And we're also going to arm the spoilers or speed brakes by lifting up on them. As you can see here, you get that white indent. Going to go ahead and lock the cabin door. Set our transponder to on. And we're just waiting for it to say available here, and it will also change screens once it's ready. Alright, so there's available. So let's go up top, and we're going to turn on the APU bleed here. Now you want to give it a second or so to take over. You can hear it spinning up there. That's good. Then we can disconnect the external power. Alright, with external power disconnected, we can also now call our pushback. So we're going to go ahead and hit activate our pushback. You can see the tug rolling there. Now, normally they would tell you when to do this, but unfortunately it doesn't tell us, so I'm going to go ahead and disengage the parking brake now. We're going to set the engine master mode here to the ignition position, so one click to the right, you can see it brings up the engine display. Alright, so we are now rolling, so we're going to go ahead and start the chronometer here to time the engine start up. Get engine 2 rolling. Let's go outside and take a look at our pushback angle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be pushing back to the left. We're going to be using the left side of the aircraft here. Engine 2 firing up nice. Now normally we'd be in the cockpit and starting up the second engine, but since we have to monitor the pushback, it kind of makes it hard. This is where better pushback in X-Plane absolutely towers over anything that Microsoft has right now. I missed the taxi line, but oh well. Just go ahead and stop it there. Let's get back in the seat, rearm the parking brake. We're going to reset the chronometer, so we're going to go click, click, click again, and start engine 1. And now that the tug is out of the way and no one's in front of us, we can activate the weather radar, and we can bring up the protective wind shear, and we can start our TCAS, so turn it all the way over to transmit and receive. Okay, engine 2 is rolling up. While that's going on, we can go upstairs here. We want to set our nose light to taxi. Good. Alright, and that's perfecto there. So now both engines are started. We'll go ahead. Now, I've seen two different variations of this. It's up to you, really, how you guys want to handle this. The engine ignition switch. I've seen people switch it back to normal after takeoff, and I've seen them switch it back to normal after startup. So, you know, I think it's more company policy than anything on how that works. So we're going to go ahead and go back to norm here. The other thing we can do, and the same thing, same behavior, you can do it after takeoff or now. I just do it now. I'm not worried about it. We're not simulating failures. So I'm just going to turn off the APU bleed and shut down the APU. Alright. And that is engine start and pushback. Now we are ready to taxi. Alright, so before taxiing the aircraft, the last few things on the checklist here is we just want to tap this takeoff config, and you'll also hear a chime. Okay, so it doesn't like something here. Let's go ahead and stop that for a second. Oh, you know what? It's because the parking brake's engaged. That's my fault. So anyway, we'll set flaps to takeoff. That's step 1, sorry. So we're going to do flaps 1. Nah, we missed it. I tried. Alright, so flaps 1 and cabin check. So we're going to come up to the top, give them a ring. And then now we can do our takeoff config. There we go. Alright. You heard the captain there say cabin crew seats for takeoff. Parking brake is disengaged. So now we're just going to start applying our power here. Did I rearm that thing? Yes, I did. There we go. Alright. So now moving forward. And the easy way to taxi, especially if you're sitting directly in front of your monitor, is take the line that you're going for and put it right between your legs. That tends to, again, this is as long as you're relatively center view, right? And have a good line on it. Oh, I picked the wrong one. I didn't want to taxi there. I want to go out the next one. Put you on a good line for the taxi lane. Come on, baby, turn. Thank you. And you also want to be taxiing at about between 15 and 20 knots. You don't want to be going too fast. With the A320, you typically do have to keep, some brake pressure down. Otherwise, it will really get rolling on you. So if you have rudder pedals, it's really ideal if they have brake pedals on them. Just sort of gently apply pressure as you move through. Because you see what I mean? Like, it'll take off on you real quick. And that's even with the engines at idle. Okay, you can pull it back to idle, and it'll still continue just to get rolling. Alright, so now as we approach the runway here, go ahead and stop it here for a minute. We'll hold short. Let's go up top. Oops. Alright, first thing we want to do is turn our strobe light on. Okay, we can turn our runway turn-off lights on, landing lights on. Set the nose wheel light to takeoff. I like to give the cabin another chime. Let them know we are out of here. Let's go ahead and take the runway. Alright, so we're going to line up. First thing we're going to do, if you come down here, you can see this little circle here. It's the actual throttle position. You can see the way I'm moving it there. Probably driving the computer nuts right now. So we're going to set it up to 50, make sure we're stabilized at 50%. Then we're going to hit the chronometer. Then we're going to push the throttles forward into the flex position because we entered in that flex temp in the performance page. Oops, wrong one. So because we entered this temperature here, we're going to move to flex here, manage control. Now, if you did not enter the flex, you're going to push your throttles all the way into toga, okay? And just use the maximum power. So let's go ahead and come back up. All right, so looking for that 50. Stabilized, brakes released, chronometer started. Oh, we need to reset it. There we go. And move into flex. And we're ready to roll. Now I'm going to be pushing this controls cross forward about 3 degrees until we pass through about 80 or 90 knots. Keep the nose down. Okay, passing through, coming up. There's V1 there. And rotating. Positive rate, gear up. Once we reach that S on the left-hand side of the speed tape there, okay, we're going to bring our flaps up, excuse me. We're going to keep pulling those up to about 15 to 17 degrees at a rate of about 3 degrees per second. Not worried about the flight plan yet, we're just sort of following the runway. Now I'm going to start turning us in. Now what we've reached is that thrust reduction altitude, so I'm pitching nose down. And now what it wants, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn on the autopilot, because it makes it hard to do it and talk about it. We see that it's saying thrust climb is what it was just saying. So you can see it, lever climb. So we're going to move the thrust levers back to this climb position. The aircraft will now level out. He'll start accelerating up to the cruise speed, or the climb speed, and then resume his climb. Alright, now, and again, this is my fault because I got so far off of the flight plan, it's getting back on the route first. And again, that's just from me trying to talk and demonstrate too much at the same time. As far as when to engage the autopilot, you actually have the option of about 100 feet off the ground. You can tag that autopilot button and it'll take over. I like to fly the climb out a little bit more, typically till I get to the thrust acceleration altitude. And you can see now we've gone into thrust climb. This is the speed configuration. your vertical configuration, your horizontal configuration. So we're set to climb. Blue altitude means that we have a target altitude, but we haven't reached it yet. Thrust climb means the engines are in climb performance. Over here is that derated configuration that we set with the flex temp, so they can only go to this maximum percentage of performance. And now you can see that we're starting to climb out again. And then here is obviously the nav mode, following the MCDU flight plan. So what happened here is it switched waypoints, so it's moving on. American Airlines 4312, you're cleared to 18,000. Hey, thanks, bud, appreciate it. Alright, so now we're just rolling the altitude target up to 18,000. You can see that changes here as well. Actually, here, let me bring that back down. I'm going to show you guys what you do if it reaches its target. So we're going to leave that as is, and you can see it's altitude asterisk means that it's approaching its target altitude. Speed mode means it's now reached a cruise altitude, or what's currently configured anyway. Alright, and now we'll start setting up for our climb into cruise. Alright, so as we're approaching our first altitude, the other thing we can do is we can disarm the speed brakes. We don't need them armed anymore. We're approaching 10,000 feet, so we can turn our exterior lights off. Alright, and now we've just gotten cleared up to 18,000 feet. So let's go ahead and we're going to roll the knob up here to 18,000. And then what we want to do is point that arrow down. Actually, sorry, I want to point it up, excuse me. Up like this, and that's managed mode. That orange dot means it's computer managed. You see the thrust levers go back into climb, and the altitude configuration back into the climb configuration. And we're off. And from here, I'll actually go ahead and set our 19,000 cruise level. So it's a pretty fun plane to fly, it really is, and it's really not as complex as it looks, and I'm actually bummed it took me so long to get into the seat of it, because it really is a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And what I mean by that, for those of you who don't have the backstory, is that in X-Plane 11 I've had the Flight Factor A320 for a couple years now and never flew it until I started flying this one. Only recently, a couple weeks ago, I made a video on flying the Flight Factor A320 versus the A32NX, and that was the first time I ever flew it. Alright, so we are approaching 18,000 feet, so as we do so, what we're going to do is change to the standard barometric pressure. So we're just going to put the arrow down, and you can see it switches into standard. You see you can get standard here, and all standard is 2992. But once you get above 18,000, all aircraft are set to that altimeter pressure. Alright, so from here, guys, it's pretty short and sweet up until all the way until our cruise altitude. So I will come back to you guys as we reach our, as we start thinking about our descent. Okay, literally the aircraft's going to climb up to 19,000 feet at this point, and then maintain its altitude until it's time for us to descend. So I'll come back to you guys once we reach that point. Alright guys, so now it's about time to start thinking about our descent. So there's a couple different ways we can figure this out, but the easiest one is the 3x3 rule. Right, so it's what we're going to be looking at is it's every 3 nautical miles for every 1,000 feet we need to descend. Right, so in our case, if we want to get down to 5,000 feet, okay, which is what we're going to do here, so we want to be at 5,000 right about here, okay, and we're at 19,000 feet, we need to descend 14,000 feet, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape here again. And so we want to go, we're going to do 14,000 is what we need to descend, and times 3. And we need to descend 42 nautical miles away, okay? So, looking at our nav display here, we want to be at 5,000 feet right about here. Okay, and you can see it's at that 70 nautical mile mark. Now we want to figure in the turn a little bit here. Okay, but for example, if we want to do the 7,000, right, we could do the same calculation. So let's bring our calculator back up. And if we wanted to get down to 7,000 feet, we would be descending 12,000 feet times 3, 36 miles, right? So right about the time this guy reaches right about here, about the 40 mile mark, we're going to start descent. Because you also want to give yourself about 10 miles to slow the aircraft down. So actually, 40, 45, we could go ahead and start now, honestly. So let's go ahead and roll this down to 7,000. Okay, and I'm going to pull, so putting the arrow down, give it a click, and you can see we've changed to open descent. Throttles go to idle. The other thing I'm going to use our performance calculator to get our meter information for Phoenix. Oh, let me refresh the page. Do that. And we can see our winds are at 300 at 10. Our outside temperature is 24. Altimeter is at 2974. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now move down to the FMC for a second. We're going to go to performance. Now you can see activate approach phase there. We want to go over here to the next phase and set it to approach. So our QNH again was 2974. Put that in there. The temperature outside is 24. Winds are 300 for 10. And transition altitude is always 18,000 feet. Decision height, let me show you guys where we're going to find that. We're going to use Navigraph again, but any of the approach plates will work. And again, we're already on Phoenix. So what we want to do is go to approach. And we want to find... Oh, no, we're on Tucson. I thought we were on Phoenix. My bad. That's not what I wanted to hit. Disregard. Let's find Phoenix. There we go. Go to approach. And we're looking for the ILS 08. And decision height is going to be right here, 250 feet. And what this is the altitude at which, if you do not see the runway by 250 feet, you do a go around. Alright, so just lock that in there, and we're all set to go. And the approach phase will automatically activate in our flight plan when we reach the decel point. Okay? So on that, we're right on track. Let's go ahead and come back up. The aircraft's already started its descent. Now we've dropped below 18,000, so we need to switch our barometric pressure back to 29 or A3NX. In our case, we can set it to Phoenix, 2974. There we go. And just ride it in from here. The other thing I'll show you guys real quick on the approach page is here you can see our configuration is full flaps. Okay, so we're going to which we are going to do. And again, very seldom will you not. Alright. And gas is looking perfect. That's much better. I like that 30% reduction we did, or whatever the heck it was. I think it was 30%. If we go to radio nav, 111 or 11175 there, that is the ILS frequency for ILS 08 for our approach. So it's already there when we enter in the arrival information on the flight plan. And you may not always enter the approach information until you actually talk to ATC. So it's not uncommon to just set the departure information, take off, and then as you get closer, you'll contact ATC and get your arrival information. The graphics really are amazing. Still amazes me with this sim. I have to give them that. I wish we had a complete cabin in the aircraft, but, you know, sort of shocked that wasn't implemented by default, but whatever. Hopefully we'll get one soon. Alright, now we're approaching 10,000 feet, so we need to get our lights back on. So we're just going to do our landing lights. We'll set our runway turn-off lights as we get closer. Set our nose wheel light, it'll be set to taxi for landing. We can reduce our rotary here, set the range down. Now as I get in closer, unless it's really bad, I will typically disable the weather radar. Makes it easier to read the nav display. And you can see what's doing here is leveling out due to flight restriction, altitude restrictions. And it's also slowing down because of a speed restriction that you can see here. The magenta are restrictions. Just realized I was on mute for that last part, so I set my altitude down to 5,000 based on the restrictions over here. That way when it comes around the corner, we continue to descend. And as long as you change your altitude before your target altitude is reached here, it'll just keep on descending. Oops. Nice to see a bit of wing flex there. That's cool. Oh, you know why it's doing that? So let me show you something that's kind of cool though. So you can see we're in open descent, so that was my fault. Now we're going to click upwards, and you can see now it's in managed mode. Now notice that we're climbing, and the reason we're climbing is because now that we're in managed mode versus open descent, and you can see by that orange dot, that means managed mode. It means the computer takes control of everything. The computer knows that we're under an altitude constraint of 7,000 feet. So now once I put it back in that mode, the computer went, oh crap, we're too low, and it's climbing us back to the restriction. Open descent is a faster climb, and that's why I clicked it when I first used, or faster descent, which is why I used it when I first started the descent, but I should have stuck with managed. So that was my fault. So from here, we're pretty much stationary until we get down to 5,000 feet, which will happen down over here. Once we get to that point, I'll bring the video back up, and we'll continue onward for the landing. All right. So we're starting to come around the bend here. We've passed our decel point. Performance page is active. We want to look at our approach speed of 130 knots here. Now we're still about 40 miles out, so we still got a ways to go here once we come around the corner, but it's going to happen pretty quick here. So in the interest of saving you guys some stress and time as you're learning, first thing we're going to want to do is arm our speed brakes here. We're going to be using medium on the auto brakes, and the reason why is we have a very long runway. We're relatively light aircraft today, don't have a whole lot of fuel to worry about, so it should be pretty short and sweet. See, we're set to 5,000. I'm going to actually start taking that down to about 3,000 here, and then we're going to make sure that she actually continues to descend once we pass our restriction points. Gosh, I can't talk today, guys. I'm sorry. And so we'll set this down to about 20 here. About 25 miles away or so, we'll activate the LS system. This is the ILS acquisition system. It allows us to start tracking the frequency. Between about 15 and 10 miles, we'll activate the localizer, which will give us the horizontal lineup for the runway. So it'll basically get us down the center of the runway. And then once the glide slope is acquired, we'll activate the approach phase and start bringing the aircraft in. At 10 miles, we want to be at flaps 1 at about 180, 170 knots. About 8 miles, flaps 2, 160, 150 knots. Flaps 3 with wheels down between 5 and 6 miles, about 150 knots, 140 knots. And then by 4 miles, full flaps, fully configured, and stabilized for landing. So you can see here we're doing about 210 knots. I'm going to start reducing that. So I'm going to set this up to about 190 knots. And give the button a down pull there. That was weird. And you can see our target speed has just changed. Alright, and there's our turn on to final. You can see KPHX there, out at about 30 miles, a little less. So I'm going to go ahead and spring this down to 20. We can go ahead and activate the LS system now. Now when you get in close like this, you really want to manage your descent. So if for any reason the aircraft's not descending the way you think it should, you want to jump on that ball real quick. Right now we're sort of just in a holding pattern here, waiting for our altitude restriction to clear. Pretty day in Phoenix. Slow us down to 180. Approaching 20 miles. Still under constraint for about 4 more miles. And this speed right here is we're approaching the stall speed. So if you go much lower than this, we would need to deploy flaps 1. So what I can do to sort of give us a little bit of buffer room is bring it to like 185. So we have a little room to play with there. And there's Phoenix Airfield right there, our airport. So we're at 20 miles from Sky Harbor. So literally immediately, if it does not start, there it goes. All right, it starts descending. If it does not start descending, as soon as you clear that restriction, you want to jump on it and force it to do it. Because in these next few miles, it's critical that you're on point. We're going to take this down to 2,000. Actually, I'm going to go down to 1,000 here. See, like that to me already isn't descending fast enough, so I'm throwing it in open descent. We're going to go ahead and turn on the localizer. And it did acquire it. That's why the aircraft's turning, so it's going to start centering us up at the runway. Go ahead and go back, reducing our speed again. And we've acquired the glide slope here. So I can go ahead and enter in the approach mode. And what you can see here is glide slope is locked and the localizer is locked because they're in green. So now we're going to do, we're approaching that 10-mile mark, so I'm going to go ahead and start with flaps 1. And actually, we can probably do flaps 2 already. Start reducing our speed further, down to about 160. Take our range down to 10 here. And we're right on our 3-degree glide slope, so we're doing good there. But we're a little fast. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to disarm the spoilers and pull them back a little bit. Help slow the aircraft down a bit. Okay, so now we're coming to that 8-mile mark. So already stay at flaps 2. I'm going to go ahead and drop the landing gear. That'll help us drag the aircraft down a bit. Go for flaps 3. Rearm the spoilers. Set us down to our approach speed. Runway turn-off lights on. Cabin crew alerted we're landing. Full flaps. That scenery, man, it looks so cool. About 200 feet from ground level, I'll go ahead and take over control of the aircraft. At this point, we'll set our go-around altitude, 2,000 feet. Because we're in approach mode, the aircraft is going to continue to descend. There's a stadium right there we're flying over. Continuing. Alright, disengaging the autopilot and the auto throttle. Flaring. Come on, baby. Gosh. Alright, reversers out. She was a lot lighter than what the computer thought we were. Reversers out till we pass about 80 knots. Slowly applying wheel brake pressure. Reverses back in. Flaps up. Alright. Taxi off the runway here. We're going to hold short here, crossing the line but not going any further. Turn the strobe light off. Turn off lights off. Landing lights off. Just leave the taxi light on. Show spoilers are disarmed. Flaps are up. Auto brake is disabled. Let's taxi to our gate. Let's go check the camera, just make sure, since we don't have anyone guiding us today. Alright, close enough. So the aircraft is parked. Let's get that parking brake going. Now the other thing I should have done when I came off the runway, saves you a lot of time, is you can start your APU. I don't know if I got that start button on or not. Nope. Alright, so we'll start the APU, but honestly we don't really need it today because we have external power, so we can swap over to external power. We'll go ahead and let the APU keep running though. Then we will come on down here, and you can use ATC or the pushback helper and get the jetway connected, and we can start shutting down our engines. Come up top again, taxi light off, wing lights off, beacon can stay on if you're doing a turnaround flight. Seatbelt signs are clear, passengers can start deboarding, and honestly we don't really need the APU, so we'll switch the APU off. And like I said, if you're doing a turnaround, everything else can pretty much stay on. Alright, so anyway guys, that's a real quick and dirty tutorial for the Airbus A320. Obviously come through and turn all your other forward equipment off. Auto throttle gets turned off, approach mode gets turned off, the LS mode gets turned off, constraints and flight directors are off. Alright, but questions, comments, leave them in the field below, and let me know what you guys thought of the video, and I'll be happy to do another one if you guys need. Real quick, obviously TCAS and transponder turned off, predictive wind shear turned off, cockpit door unlocked. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.